Hello, my name is Brant Hunt, and my channel is Discerning What is True. I am going to be sharing a particular book by Phil Langdon called On the Origins of Gnosis. I'll be reading the foreword, and also will be reading his first chapter of Philosophy Squared. So I hope everyone's doing well today. Beautiful weather here where I live at, which is in South Carolina. And hope that everyone is not only having a good week. I thought today was the first day of autumn or fall, and reality simply is that it's not. It will be Saturday, be the first day of fall. So here we go. We'll get into the book here. Thank you for being here. On the Origins of Gnosis by Phil Langdon. This book was published in 2023, and the chapter I'm going to be dealing with is chapter 1. But I'm going to first go in the forward and read some things more of what he wants to share, what's the beginning of the book. The Nag-Hammadi scrolls discovered in Egypt in 1945 were found to be Gnostic in nature, meaning the scrolls refer to direct personal experience of God and a deeper reality. Unlike near-death experiences who come back after momentary death with unique divine stories, this experience is the same every time, though. As such, it can be written down as Gnosis texts that know or have Gnosis, as opposed to anything that could be called near-death texts passed off as product of imagination by modern analysis. If there is a true experience of Gnosis with the power to reveal the hidden truth behind the world that may be deemed genuine and repeatable, we must be able to find correspondence between the various texts that purport to describe it. The different writers should all be talking about the same thing independently, like branches of science, you see. The Gnosis scrolls should create a unique and distinct overall picture of the hidden metaphysical reality they claim to portray, in accordance with natural science and sound philosophy. The only question is, are we truly privy to Gnosis spirituality, as suggested by the writers of the text? If we are, then finding the source of reality subjectively, for that is what Gnosis amounts to. It is a potentiality valid testimony that logically touches the root of the objective reality we know as the cosmos. If the truth is singular in nature, it goes without saying that the subjective inner and objective outer worlds are rooted in the same truth as some kind of origin. Logically, we could trace the single origins back to the birth of the cosmos at the beginning of time. This is a testimony of the Gnosis writers, who claim to have experienced a singular, timeless root of existence as the nature of their spiritual ascension. Experienced the T=0 moment of cosmic birth as what he calls ascension. Out of the limited and physical point of view, allows the individual to know what is behind the physical veil from the greater, fuller, expanded point of view. In these terms, spiritual ascension is specifically the only subjective event that produces the original metaphysical seed or spark or objective cosmic creation, explaining why religious content across the world always contains a creation myth. Chapter 1, Philosophy Squared. Quote from Carl Jung, "I am not what happened to me, I am what I choose to become." And I think that's something we all struggle with here at this time period. We basically say, what's wrong with me, or what happened to me, such and such, and most forget that simply is you have the ball in your hand. That is metaphorically. That is, you can pick up the ball and run with it. Okay, you can choose whatever you want to become. You see, and the most highest thing you can be is ascended. There's nothing higher than that. That's when you have communion with God within your own self. Anyway, somewhere in the limitless range of the imagination is the idea of perfection, recognizing that perfection must exists, if it tops the range of existence somewhere, somehow we can set about finding out what it is and what it means in real terms. We can formulate a plan when we have a sense of what and where it might be found, to then set about finding it by putting out thoughts into action. When we have a good sense of how to accomplish our now planned ideas, we set about the physical task of creating it. Fortunately, the idea to action sequence that seeks to know perfection is so well trodden by humanity. That is, has the grand title of it called the great work. The work is great because finding perfection in the true self, that is God, as the singular metaphysical root of existence, generates our salvation from the automatic nature of reality, as well as the cause of our own creation. It closes a loop for us personally and allows us to know the deepest and most sought after unknown beyond our personal point of view, the greater self-knowledge and wisdom. Before we can align ourselves with the perfection of philosophy as the truth within, for that where it manifests, we need to fathom the patterns of the objective world of energy as well as the subjective world of our own psyche. Notorious dangerous territory which is tangle of personal bias and potential lack of objective logic prior to alignment with objective truth. In this sense, the natural world is our firm teacher, eventually becoming a testament in our awareness to the hidden truth behind it. The great work, however, is not simply the study of physical reality. It is the way we appreciate our studies that count. For instance, if we give a Shakespearean play to a monkey, they will eventually rip the pages out and wipe their backsides with them. Give the same play to a human, and the result can be similar until we encounter an intelligent one who can appreciate the words and hopefully what they mean. The point is to help transform a shallow, simplistic view into a deeper one, to share the wisdom of the writer and convey the sense of depth and discernment required. It's like our finger pointing to the moon. If we concentrate on the finger, we will miss all the heavenly glory. Those who have understood and become wise sages in the past would have recorded or coded their insights in a variety of ways to keep the knowledge alive, such as in the classical stories of graphic recorded in the form of art and architecture. Even the layout design of a sacred building. Humanity has been around long enough to have already standardized the understanding of philosophy perfection, that is, in the square circle. Among the churches and temples of the world, the one that most succinctly approaches the true act of square in the circle as an archetype for spiritual transcendence is the pyramid form. A pyramid is a philosophical and allegory building, primarily not a practical one for living in, as the main architecture allegory for the square circle. The base of a pyramid is naturally a perfect square, whose centers must coincide and remain vertically true all the way up to the singular point at the top. Equivalently, if our evaluations are true in life, we build a mental picture of reality that should rise as a pyramid, goes up straight and true, arriving at its destination, a single point of full understanding. As we live, we make comparisons with the information we gain from experience of the way things are, and allegorically make bricks from clay. Arranged in the accumulation of our bricks, each represents a filtered and established piece of information concerning objective reality. We make a mental pyramid accumulated reliable knowledge that rises and guides us to the singular truth by logical induction and deduction, and eventually divinely inspired philosophical extrapolation. Truth is forever true. By definition, as such, is forever robust. By its very nature and definition, truth must be rooted in a single idea that is set in stone, like a pyramid or the king's sword. You can learn nothing of value without it. If truth was based on more than one idea, there would be duality or conflict, and either only one is true or both are wrong. As such, the truth is guaranteed to be one thing only, or singular, fixed, severe, and indifferent, like a double-edged sword that will metaphorically cut the one who wields it as easily as its opponent. The only way a person can wield the sword of truth safely, then without cutting himself, is by gaining the true understanding that understanding that leads to deep spiritual wisdom from critical thinking and self-honesty. The name of the king's sword is Excalibur and has a history of variations in northwestern Europe, but it's thought to come from the Old Welsh Calwich, spelled Caledfwich, where Cal, Cald, means hard, and Bewitch means cleft or breach. In Latin, it is Caliburnus from Shopibus, that is, meaning steel, which of course is hard. Whatever the true origins of the name, the most important thing is that it represents the indifference of the cold, hard truth, which cannot be changed to suit our personal views and limited biases. Since reality is simple, but has the greater depth, the method of instructions concerning the deepest nature is supposed to be fulfilled by teachers of myth and religion, involving three layers, that is, mythical, ritual, and mystical. At the mythical level, that is, the religion contains stories that are constructed to convey the greater wisdom of the human condition through the allegory of a hero fighting evil. At the level of ritual, practices are constructed to convey meditations on aspects of divine nature through subjects such as geometry or epistemology that stays with the individual as a learning experience they can relate to and draw from. The mystical layer is the final level, where the divine is experienced directly by the individual from the training afforded by the myth and practice of their personal study. Thus, every religion is supposed to bring each person into direct contact and union with God, the truth of their own existence, such that a go-between is no longer needed, and the guru or master teacher gives way to the truth itself and the student's appreciation. This final level is the reason for the previous two, allowing the individual to slowly come into sync with the divine by listening, reflecting, and meditating on each new understanding, slowly gaining the understanding that leads to the fullness of self-awareness. A writer of mysticism, that is, and cosmic awareness called Iona Miller explains the stage of unification. The mystical marriage has 7 basic stages. Number 1 is the quest. Number 2 is the awakening of love. Number 3 is the attainment of knowledge. Number 4 is detachment. Number 5 is unification or blending. Number 6 is annihilation. And number 7 is divine consummation. The nature of becoming selfless is the unqualified part of the great work. It comes as a natural consequence of doing the work through our own form of therapy and scientific learning. Building our own inner understanding is seemingly purely mechanical as a process, in contrast, and therefore quantifiable. It is only when we act out of care for the greater being as the result of our gained understanding that we prove our worth is in compassion for others. With deep and sure understanding, we naturally invite the divine from within. This channel and attitude is the sure sign that our learning is having an effect, attracting our own highest self to us in the process. Like attract like. Effectively doing the great work is a question of awareness, analyzing oneself, and having access to the truth concerning the natural world in the first place. In the absence of teachers, we are left with our own experience of the natural world to draw information from, even though, ideally, a teacher could be sought by the individual. How would they know who is good and who is not as a source of information? This brings us to the issue of knowing for ourselves through our own experience. As Bruce Lee once said, quote, "The only help is self-help." Bruce Lee's statement emphasizes the point of becoming sure from our own thinking and experience, since we can only prove the truth to ourselves ultimately. A teacher will only ever be a guide. There must be an internal dialogue, where the individual can question issues relative to their current understanding in full, which takes time. As time goes on, greater insight is gained through comparisons until we reach the top of our inner pyramid or mountain, where there is no comparison left to make. The speed with which we proceed is up to us. All roads lead to the truth eventually, as the inevitable reality we discover slowly through time and experience, since truth is estin. Always and forever, we simply digest it in bits as we go along, like eating according to our own needs until we find our own fullness. Along the way, of course, we experience our own physical and psychological growth, no matter what comes our way. According to the famous psychologist Carl Jung, everyone falls into a psychological category of personality types, of which there are 12, and everyone seeks one of the 4 general goals in life. Whether Jung was reworking mysticism or not, his 4 personality orientations matched the 4 worlds sequence in the mystical archetype, starting with the yearning for paradise, emphasized by the word freedom, corresponding with the first world of imagination, E-M-A-N-A-T-I-O-N. The rest corresponds very neatly. Connecting to other people, for instance, is creating a network of acquaintances, providing order and providing order and structure obviously falls into the formation category. And finally, action is the work of a person who makes things happen in their life. The 4 modes characterized by Jung are freedom, that is yearning for paradise; social connection to others, that is creation; order, providing structure to the world, that is formation; and ego, leaving a mark on the world, that is action. And corresponding with every human being, regardless of their personality type, the psyche classical has 4 modes of operation, namely intuition, emotion, intellect, and physical senses. When it comes to the body, we can assign these same modes uniquely to the various centers of the body, which can be split into 4 zones, namely sensuality at the groin, desire at the navel, emotions at the heart, and the intellect in the head. In the old Hindu system of gunas, Gunas, we find the same correspondence shortened to just 3 attributes, whereas sattva, S-A-T-T-V-A, is the intellect, rajas, R-A-J-A-S, is the emotional content that includes desire, and tamas refers to the sensual living, in conjunction with desire, as if the navel is a point of union between the heart, emotion, and reproductive sensual center. And so he gives these illustrations, like I said, in colors. The senses are blue. And this is in the lotus position. The area where your navel is desire, which is red. The next step up is orange, which is near your chest area, emotions. And the last one is the top one with yellow being intellect. Similar to the gunas, but the gunas are actually in 3 particular areas, unlike the centers of him showing 4. Excuse me. Each mode of living has its own consequences over time. For instance, living in sattva, spending more time with philosophical and contemplation, means we advance closer to objective truth and divinity, because we can eventually see through our own faults and intersensitivities, identifying more with our highest aspects and separating ourselves from our lower nature over time. This is why people don't move forward. This is my take on it. They're caught up, what I would call, on sensual things, pleasing themselves in many ways. That's been enormously pushed in the last, 50 years, to do with the sexual part of life, when reality simply I would see it simply as being not as important. What I mean simply is I want to put it in a way that you can understand. You are just simply gravitating to what you want. You're looking for happiness in some ways, but you don't realize that with that sexual being involved with somebody, you are actually you're becoming one-to-one with that person, and your perspective may be wrongly, meaning simply is you're seeking to only be gratified in the idea of having sex, and that doesn't lead to truth, folks. It doesn't. You're caught up in sexual ideas, but that's what's gravitated through all kinds of advertisements all over the place in the world we live, and people think that's the cherry on top. No, it's not, because most of the time simply is most people get broken because people are not genuine. They're being selfish in their motives and not being genuine. Living for the emotions, which is Rajas, leaves us no closer to the goal of truth, and we stay the same person without the transforming philosophy. The worst of these, of course, is tamas, or what we call sensual living. By engaging too much in this state, we can be left drained and bereft of philosophical understanding to the point of starving our soul of its nourishment, since understanding anything above the common level becomes unnecessary in such a lifestyle. Yeah, that's why I've talked to Phil, and it's this whole idea of wishful thinking. People don't do anything. They have this wish that they think that things are just going to turn out all right. Everything's going to go. They're going to be peaches. Everything's going to work out the way they want it to work out. And most of the time, simply is it never works out. It never does. Because you haven't done any work. You're on a child level. You're acting just like a child. You're wishful thinking. And this can be incorporated with what I call religion or Christianity. Oh, I accepted Jesus in my heart. You see, that's very childlike, and that's why religion and churches pursue children at an early age, so they can get them into the churches, you see, and then they can quote unquote milk them for finances and belief, and you being there constantly and always being bombarded with their programming, such as over and over and over. There is no change, you see, in their lives. Never has been. They're still a spiritual babe because they really haven't gone any further. See, you cannot. Most people think some God or something like Jesus can save you, and all you gotta do is say a little prayer. But when you look at people who have done that, you come to the realization there never was a change in their lives. There never was. You see, never was. Anyway, I'm just kind of got off on a tangent here. At the other end of the mental spectrum is the issue of mental health and the apparent connection between psychotic episodes and mystical experiences. How to know psychotic episodes from a truth about anything other than a subjective experiences. How to see the differences between a person who is genuinely contemplating the depths of reality or a person who is using the intellect as a means of escaping their immediately life and environment. Carl Jung was accused of this, you see. When it comes to the subjective world of the mind and imaginations, the sky is the limit without a standard or measuring stick of some kind. The only indication of any standard in these terms is cross-references, or to see if there is any match whatsoever. Pattern recognition is a broadly applicable subject. The expectation with a collection of subjective experiences is that there will be no correspondence other than perhaps the archetype imagined differently by each person. However, ancient human tradition paints a very different picture that tells us it was thought. THOUGHT. There's a unique subjective experience shared by all those who elevate themselves with insight and philosophy to a point of truth above the physical level of existence. A unique and recordable experience carried by the esoteric tradition for countless centuries and recorded in many forms and guises. The human psyche was viewed as having 12 noetic intellectual forces whose attributes were projected onto the night sky. That is the wheel of the zodiac around the equatorial plane, that is, of the earth, accompanied by the rest of the night sky constellations, were used as storytelling devices to record useful ideas associated with human psychological, divinity, and physical world. The zodiac signs and their attributes were also applied to the human body from head to feet, as well as the human mind alone as a way of dealing with and simplifying self-analysis. Carl Jung's corresponding 12 personality types are like mission statements in life, a standardized automatic pattern. Each person will feel the need to fulfill this innate mission naturally, without noticing that they are in a pattern until it is pointed out. For instance, the gesture type will want to entertain others more than anything else, whereas the ruler type, in contrast, would want to control others more than anything. So we have he's talking about what we call the head zodiac and the body zodiac here. And it's interesting, if you look into zodiacs and you look at this type of thing, and you have to understand simply is that what tools were you given just when you were born at certain times? What are the opportunities of a certain particular sign? Well, as me being an Aries is a lot to do with the head. So it's a lot to do with thinking. It's a lot to do with studying, seeking, to intellect, you see, and wanting to know, not to just guess at something, you see. And so there has to be, in some ways, in my own thinking, simply, that's my pursuit. I want to know. I want to know. I want to know. That's as a child, what little funds I had as a child, I would always buy as each year, try to get what I would call the World Almanac, because I was always interested in what I would call statistics and about certain countries and geography and about the industry in that country and how great they were or how poor they were, and how certain countries would be what we call financially bountiful, and then the other countries in the world would be completely opposite of that. You see, that's just one example. Let's continue. We may not have a choice when it comes to automatic things like human attraction or personality types or even our zodiac signs, but we do have a choice. That's the key in what we do about it. So it's just not what you've been given. A lot of times you can pursue things if you desire it. If we know our automatic nature, we can work with and override it with conscious effort and awareness. It is our action that define us, as a result, leading to self-mastery and self-control when we recognize the more refined nature of truth is ever available to us beyond the personal view alone. For instance, we can use our minds to recall useful information by using it allegorically as a palace with rooms, a mind palace, you see, where we store useful information by graphic association, as if gathering the bricks to make our own pyramid, which in this case is the palace itself. With the pyramid built shy of the capstone, the symbolic nature of capping, that is, capping a pyramid with a single stone, mimics our ascension above the impersonal physical level of the square into the personal fullness of our own zero-dimensional nature. In so doing, we prove our worth or prove our intelligence and our ability to do so. We transform the cosmic darkness within us as our subconscious content and become divinely aware. The abyss becomes our mind and heaven our home. We process each our own piece of cosmic material, our body, and spiritualize it by the purest applicable understanding. The alchemist would say we turn our lead or base metal into gold in a crucible of our lives. Human life is a drama comparably to a 3-act play. We are born, we crawl around on 4 legs, we grow to walk on 2 legs, and reach old age on 3 legs with the aid of a stick, a cane, before passing away. Likewise, the arc of the sun, as an allegory for human life, is a newborn baby at sunrise, raised and exalted at midday, at its highest point in the sky, to mature until sunset and old age. So goes the ancient view of the human being, apparently spoken as a riddle by the Sphinx at Giza, to passing travelers to highlight the importance of process and connection to metaphysics. Any process is an event that changes one thing, initial condition, into something else, or after, or post-conditional, like a function in mathematics that change an input number into a different output number, or a personal great work that reaches towards the fullness of understanding from a starting point of ignorance. The idea of process In this sense, it is a universal principle applicable across a vast range of subjects and situations. This is especially true when we consider that every aspect of existence without personal imagination or real world is in a state of permanent change or process, no matter what size or how slow. Logic detects we will always find the underlying and individual truth of something when we simply look at what it is and what it does. We all know that a tree and the seeds it produce are a testament to the original seed that created them, proving its prior existence by reproduction. An acorn will always make more acorns in a cycle or loop, where one seed becomes many through the function of the oak tree. Relating the seed with the ground by planting it is the primary function or the catalyst for their unification as the tree they produce, which then becomes the function that turns the original seed into many more. This natural process of transformation, expansion, and accumulative abundance relate the plant's discretion as a seed with its own continuity as the process between generations of seeds. In this case, just as we find in a three-act drama, the two natures of a discrete seed and the continuous ground are introduced in the first act as a set of discrete points, one to represent the seed and 2 points apart as a line for the outer distinction or ground in which the seed is planted. The figure for the second act in the sequence shows a triangle or the same 3 original points, but now unified as the tree. Finally, the relationship resolves into the truth that connects them, producing a 4th point, that is a new seed, having both of its parents' qualities at once. A simple geometric allegory for the same expansion starts with a single point, like a seed that expands through a process of addiction and accumulation, like a tree producing a potential limitless number of copies of the original seed, like the 4th point of the discrete tree archetype. The geometry of this process is the simple expansion of polygons that naturally starts with a single point, expanding into 2, then 3, and adding points and up to infinity. As the numbers of points increase to infinity, the limits of the sequence becomes a circle with an infinite number of points as its circumference. In the process of the original discreteness has been satisfied and turned into a continuous circle, leaving a potentiality infinite whole that lacks a definite center. At this stage, it is either one thing or the other, not both at once. Or, of course, defining the center of a circle on paper is simply a matter of using a compass to make the center in the first place. However, in the infinite concept, the circle represents that is important, since we are conceptually defining the centers of infinity itself, which naturally has no center, being continuous, limitless, timeless, ineffable, and undefined. The appropriate allegory and means to accomplish this task is known in geometry as squaring the circle. The circle as the infinite is recast as a measurable square with the same circumference as the circle to guarantee the correspondence of a center. The square esoterically represents the fourfold nature of the natural world. Again, it's esoteric, meaning internal. Ineffable, unmeasurable spirit. Once the square is defined, its center is geometrically implied by crossing opposite corners, metaphorically relaying how physical reality comes from the same truth, that we do. The center of the circle is defined in the process, and by interference, a definite center is the infinite continuity, shown in the right as a discrete point, surrounded by a continuous circle. Like any event or story that has a beginning, middle, and end, squaring the circle is a simple circular starting from a point to a circle, back to a point again, defining the same 3-act dramatic event as the seed-making process, but in a purely philosophical, that is, sacred geometry terms. The nature of the objective world is easily provable with weights and measures. Metaphysics is beyond physics, in contrast, and incorporates the process that reaches towards the perfection of divine ideal philosophy from the ground of experience, more like raising our head above the trees of a forest to verify the misty mountain archetype in the distance, an allegory for the everlasting pinnacle of truth that we must reach to know the fullness of our own range and become masters of ourselves. Extrapolating to the infinite extremes of both the idea of a discrete point and its surrounding continuity gives a pointed singularity and an infinite expanse beyond measure as the greatest distinction they can have. The only difference between them at this extreme as common singular entities is that the circle distinctly highlights an infinite whole. Philosophically, you see, a circle can have any size, of course. It can be small, be large, it can get larger, such and such. I'm sorry. My fingers are not as big as that. I think I know. The only distinction there can be then is between its discretion and its continuity to infinity, a condition that is fulfilled philosophically and geometrically by the unit, point, and circle on each side of the zero dimension. The center circle is a continuous unit, like a discrete seed that contains the potential of its own continuity. The three-act sequence of square in the circle in these terms becomes a discrete singularity, followed by a continuous or infinite whole, completed by defining a center for the whole and establishing a relationship between the two extremes of discrepancy and continuity. This is philosophy. After all, as such, we have a complete lifespan of the archetype of process embodied in the applicable graphic philosophy of sacred geometry. This is now the bedrock on which we can build an expanding view of reality. Again, the squared circle is also effectively 2 points in a relationship where the full circle completes the range of a potentiality. By taking any point on the circumference, we can draw a circle with the same radius and produce 2 circles, interlocked at their respective centers. This geometry form is known as vesica piscis, meaning the fish bladder. The form of a vesicle inherently contains a double square whose internal geometry produces the universal growth proportion known as the golden section, dubbed phi, or phi, whichever way you want to pronounce it, relating to the concept of universal creation order. As a graphic metaphor of creation, the vesica begins a process of self-replication and multiplication that fulfills its range by expanding into the flower of life, a threefold accumulation resulting in a hexagonal array, filling all spatial potentiality as a two-dimensional figure, suggesting a natural limit has been reached as we find in defining the unit square circle. Sacred geometry is also a potential philosophy of reality. It gives us circles and squares as spheres and cubes, and the geometry architect's form and structure. Manifest fullness is square, cubical, and discrete, whereas spiritual fullness, as the opposite, is circular, spherical, and continuous. Together as the square circle, they represent the greatest application of the yin-yang relationship between what is finite or discrete and what is infinite and continuous, realized in what we call Da Vinci's by Vitruvian man as ascended divine being in the crucified or the T pose. The letter T is famously known as the last letter of sacred alphabets, denoting the completion of an overall cycle that sees the observer define and bring forward their own inter-divine fullness. Since defining the centers of the infinite is the purview of reason, as already suggested, it is the divinely inspired human that the pinnacle of reason, the singular truth, is realized and established. It is the completion of the impossible task of finding a center to the infinite that is highlighted in Da Vinci's Virtuoso's man in the square circle. Only a divinely inspired person can achieve the levels of reasoning that recognizes and unifies dual opposites, defining a new metaphysical seed from within their physiology. From this, primordial light is produced by the pineal gland in the center of the head that looks like a cloud with thin beams of light extending from it. The light is the union of heaven as God's Holy Spirit and earth as the observer, a physical effect from a spiritual source. The ancient Greek mystical philosophy referred to of this light as a solar body, in reference to the sun, whose arc from sunrise finds its zenith at midday, signifying the moment when an initial becomes a illuminate or a angel. The word angel refers to angles of divine light that shine in the recipients of ascension, now a messenger of God. All 7 colors of the rainbow are associated with the pure white solar body, each color being referred to as an archangel or powers of the light. At the precise moment when the unification of dual opposites is understood by prior divine inspiration in the bliss of the sacred trance, samadhi/transcendental meditation, the observer experiences a sudden and instantaneous explosion, that is, expansion into light speed away from everything familiar to him. They arrive immediately in the expanded infinite boundaries. They arrive immediately in the expanded infinite boundless divine realm, known as the abyss, as if a curtain is pulled back, wiping away the cosmos, leaving a transparent, pitch black expanse or void that is completely empty, a truly infinite and singular expanse in all directions. And that's talking about the observer and the observed. The ascended scene relates a singular point of view. The observer shown as a bright light on the left, with the only other thing in the scene a cumulonian bus-type extension of cloud with thin white beams extending from its surface out into the blackness of the void. The central image below shows the light as it appears to the ascended person at first, flanked on the left by a classic depreciation of the light of Yahweh, the Jewish God seen coming into clouds, as an allegory for the moment of true perception. The Merkabah shown on the right, meaning spirit, life, and body, is the sacred geometry or philosophical nature of the light, formed of 2 opposing tetrahedrons, refused together as the allegorical union of spirit and energy, both of which can be represented by a discrete network of 4 logical points, or tetrahedrons, formed by folding up 4 triangles, making 12 corners together as a tetrahedron. They make a total of 8 corners, which when distressed, produce a cube, applicable to the 3 dimensions of space and the imaginary and expansive dimensions of change or time. The light, also appropriately referred to as the truth with flesh, and its its environment, the infinite transparent abyss, together comprise the timeless seed constituents of root of the inter and external realities at t = 0, known as Zeb Tepi in ancient Egypt. The dual potentialities, that is, of yin and yang, of unity that merges the 2 opposite qualities forever, the single gate between heaven and earth, only accessible internally by the divinely inspired observer and the experiencer of metaphysics. Also can be shown as what we call the 2 keys. The 2 keys that are demonstrated actually in the Vatican, one being golden and the other one being silver. Okay, that's chapter 1 today, The Origins of Gnosis by Phil Langdon. And I wanted to share that with you. This is on the origins of Gnosis, and that was chapter 1 along with the foreword. And so I'm hoping you're having a good day today, and I wish you goodness and peace today also. And I hope that you have eyes to see and ears to hear what is being shared here. Thank you for listening. You have a pleasant day. Take care.